Okay, so I'd like to talk a little bit and explain what I mean when I say that printed text, the letters in printed text might mirror other letters in printed text. So you'll notice that first of all, the left-hand column is red and the right-hand column is blue. They're not the same series of letters. The left-hand column, the red column, all has the same sequence of letters: Q, P, O, N, U, D, and B. But the right-hand column, the blue column, all has a slightly different sequence of letters: Q, P, N, U, O, D, and B. And this will become apparent why quite soon. First of all, I'd like to explain, I've played around with the sizes of the letters so that I can get them more or less the same width, the same sort of, the same size as each other. But they're all different fonts. So this first one here, you will see this first font is a classic serif font. It's called Georgia. You might find Times New Roman. And on the other side, again, is Georgia just in blue. So Georgia's the top row. The second row, it's here on this pixel art program that I'm using. You can use any program you'd like. It's something called a Dolphin. Now I chose a Dolphin because it's a very good example of what you might call a Gothic script. The Gothic script is where the strokes of the vertical parts of the letters just go straight up and down, and the round parts are basically circles. So you can see that the Q is a circle with a vertical stroke next to it. Likewise the P, a circle with a vertical stroke next to it. The N is two vertical strokes with a quarter circle archway attaching the two vertical strokes there. And the same on the other side, slightly different sequence of letters, slightly different color, but again it's a Dolphin, and you can see the Gothic nature of the letters here. Okay, we'll go on to the next one. Verdana, it's a sans serif font, and it's a very common font that people use in sans serif and on this side as well. So I don't think we need to explain more. If you've seen Verdana once, you've seen it 1,000 times, I believe. Next, we have Gustavo. This is another sans serif font, slightly different from Verdana. So if you noticed here with Verdana, the strokes are all more or less the same size. With Gustavo, the D and the B appear slightly longer than the P and the Q. And the N and the U are slightly different. The N here has got far more of a vertical stroke, and the U is a little bit more rounded there. And so there's a little bit of a difference there. We go down. This is a strange font, Ben Grass. But it's another sans serif font, and it does something slightly different. There are curves here on the Q and the P. The N is slightly curved, you can notice. The U is less curved. The D there has a bit of a serif, not really a serif, but a bit of a curve there. But there isn't such a thing like that on the B. And so you can see that each of the letters looks slightly different. And here, this is called Peanut. It's not Comic Sans. That doesn't appear on the Pixel Art program, but it might as well be Comic Sans. It's very, very similar. Okay, so why have I used QPONUDB on one side, but QPNUODB on the other? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the right-hand column, and I'm going to basically turn all of these series of letters upside down. So just go here. We'll rotate this 180 degrees. And then we'll go down to the Dolphin one, and we'll rotate it 180 degrees. And so on, and so on, and so on. There. You can see that they've all been rotated 180 degrees. And it might become apparent now why they were all written slightly differently. Because what we can now do is we can now experiment. We can find what we call the mirrored letters. So let's go up to Georgia, and we'll take the blue version of the Georgia, and we'll just bring it across here and place it on top of the red. And you'll notice here at the bottom of the Q and the P, and at the top of the D and the B, and a little bit on the N and the U, there are bits that don't quite match. They don't mirror. You can see that the Georgia doesn't invert and sit neatly on top of its inverse, if you like. To show you what I mean and what does mirror neatly, this is the Dolphin, the Gothic script that's been just turned upside down, and you'll notice when we take it across here that it is an exact match, and that sits perfectly. There's no overlap. There's no difference between, if you like, the mirrored script in the red and the mirrored script in the blue. They are exactly the same as each other. Whereas this, you'll notice the B's and the Q's and the P's, and even a little bit on the N, there's blue you can see sticking out and red, and they don't quite match. There we go. We'll go here. This is Verdana, very common font. I like it. It's a very nice font indeed. But again, you'll notice that pretty much the letters in Verdana mirror each other when you turn them around. So the D mirrors the B mirrors the D, the P and the Q mirror each other. The N and the U are just upside down versions of each other. And so we find that with things like Verdana, a lot of these sans serif scripts, they actually mirror each other quite a bit. This sans serif script here, however, remember we chose it because the sizes of the vertical strokes on the P's and the D's, the B's and the Q's aren't the same, and the N and the U isn't quite the same. So we see there, you can see the blue sticking up there, and it takes a while. There you go. And if you try to have the upward strokes of the red and the blue the same, then obviously there's a difference. So we'll try to place them as close as we can over each other. The U obviously has a difference. You can see the blue there, and the P's and the Q's, the D's and the B's upside down. They don't mirror each other. Very much the same in this, in Bengras. Slightly more pronounced, however, because you'll notice that the P's and the Q's, they have more roundedness on them, and you can see more blue sticking through, and it's very difficult to place, if you like, to place one on top of the other and see that they're exact opposites of each other. If you try to change it, yeah, it's very, you can't really do it. You can't really show. Yeah, very difficult indeed. Very difficult indeed to get each of these letters to sit in, as it were, the same space on top of each other. This is a version of Comic Sans, and you can see clearly that there's a big difference between these letters. And Comic Sans itself, the letters, the difference is even greater. But it's impossible to put, if you like, the inverted version of the blue on top of the original version of the red and have them form the same shape and have them sit in the same space. And that's what we mean by mirroring. So we can see here that the serif font doesn't mirror. The Gothic font here, there's a lot of mirroring going on. Same with the sans serif font. These two sans serif fonts don't mirror. And of course, the Comic Sans type font, that doesn't mirror either, but you might have to be careful with whether it's an appropriate font to use. Now, of course, anybody with a visual processing disorder or who has sequencing eccentricities where left and right can get confused, anybody who's like that will find reading letters that mirror each other quite tricky. And so what you want to do is you want to play around, experiment, find letters, find a font whose letters don't mirror each other. In general, I would recommend do not try Gothic. I mean, some people like Gothic, but you'll always find that Gothic fonts have a lot of mirroring going on.